In the Kingkiller Chronicle, there is one character that comes to mind who is both simultaneously appreciated by one part of the fanbase, while adamantly hated by the rest. The character to which I refer to is of course Denna. For many readers, Denna comes off as rather annoying. Among Kingkiller fans, little sympathy can be found for a love interest who knowingly toys with our main character's feelings, only for her to then spend much of her free time seducing rich men to make a living. And I can see where the people who dislike Denna are coming from. It's like the books are trying really hard to make you feel sorry for her because she has lived this difficult life, and has had to rely on the sympathy of strangers to get by. Yet the problem here is that since the books are also hiding her past and primary motivations, it's difficult to see her as anything other than a gold digger. Well, that is how I used to feel about her on my first read through. My opinion on her has somewhat improved since then, but before we delve into that, I want to look back on how Denna was introduced into the series. We first cross paths with Denna in chapter 33 of The Name of the Wind, where she is accompanying Rohan's caravan. At the time, Kvothe had his sights set on the university to further his magical education, and while the beginnings of a budding romance started to blossom between them, their time together was short, and the two quickly parted ways. They would run into each other again months later at the Eolian, when Kvothe was competing for his talent pipes. Kvothe played and sang the lay of Sir Severin Chillalord, singing the part of Severin, and leaving the part of Eolian open for anyone to sing. It was Denna who ended up singing the duet with him, somewhere in the audience, though Kvothe wasn't aware of it at the time. After much searching through the crowd, he eventually finds his Eolian, who would turn out to be none other than the girl he found so irresistibly fascinating months before. And although Kvothe was immensely pleased to see her again, he was equally dismayed to find out that she was also being courted by his friend Savoy. However, after Denna appears at Anker's bar sometime later, she tells Kvothe that she hasn't seen Savoy in a while. As it turns out, this would form much of the basis of her relationships with men throughout the series. Her quick wit and charm draw men to her like a moth to a flame. She knows how to use her beauty to lead men on, but as soon as they get too familiar with her, she skips town. The fact that she goes around scamming men while deriving satisfaction from toying with people does seem rather disingenuous. What's more, she often acts condescending and snarky towards Kvothe, behaving as if she were morally above him. But then, in other scenes, we see a side to her that highlights just how conceited and downright petty she can be. Kvothe is also obnoxious in the way he endlessly sings her praises, and I think that's where most people's problems with Denna lie. At the end of the day, my issue with Denna is not so much her personality, or even her choices, which I confess there are justifications for, but how Kvothe views her. Remember, the Kingkiller Chronicle is a story that is told from his perspective, so any admiration Kvothe sends her way is not objective. This is quite telling given how often he muses about how amazing and smart she is, where in reality she has done some pretty stupid things like putting a random substance into her mouth that she finds lying around. Yeah, eating the Denna resin, a highly addictive and poisonous drug, wasn't the smartest idea, considering Denna is the only female character that Kvothe pines for. It's like he idolizes her only because she's the woman he loves, not because there's anything particularly special about her. Interestingly, Bast also draws attention to this by pointing out to Kvothe that she's not as beautiful and flawless as he makes her out to be. Now let me make one thing clear, I don't necessarily dislike Denna. In her defense, I understand how precarious her position in life is. She's homeless and poor, and needs to put food on the table. She has to make the most out of her situation, and she does this by using what resources she has at her disposal, namely her good looks, charm, and talent for music. Denna's decision to use men to obtain free gifts, which she then sells for money, is a choice she makes out of a necessity to survive. Where I suppose my frustration lies is when Kvothe inexplicably runs into her all the time, because then I know I'm going to be spending the next hour with these two, discussing flowers or some such drivel, whilst never actually taking their relationship to a romantic level. I have to hand it to Rothfuss, that while I may not like the dynamic between the two, it is realistic. For one, Kvothe is still a teenager, and well, it's a fact that many teenagers do put their crushes on a pedestal while not making a move out of fear of rejection. Kvothe ends up convinced that in spite of her fondness for him, pursuing her would ultimately be a waste of time and would drive her away. Perhaps one of the most revealing scenes about Denna's character is when Kvothe follows her in Severin. He spots her brandishing a knife against an attacker who is trying to hurt this young girl. After rescuing her, Denna goes on to advise the girl on how to fend for herself and lays out her options. This is an interesting scene because we finally get to see Denna in a new light, without Kvothe's sentiments intruding on the matter. The conversation with the young girl shows us that Denna has been misused in the past, and it stresses the limited opportunities for unskilled women of little means in this world. Not all women in Kingkiller have the background, education or skills to choose the profession they'd like. What this scene is trying to tell us is that there is no better alternative for Denna to survive than to become an object for men to pursue. She says there is always a price to pay, and it would seem she pays the price whenever she is forced to burn bridges and leave town, especially when one of her many boyfriends gets hands-on with her. It is heavily implied that Denna is having her own adventures in the service of her secretive patron. In Book 1, she becomes more mysterious during the Traben massacre. Kvothe finds her in an inn where she's being treated for her injuries. He soon discovers she was the only survivor of a wedding that was attacked by the Chandrian, which she had attended at the request of her patron, Master Ash, whose true identity is yet to be revealed. Leading her into the woods, Master Ash asks for Denna's permission to knock her unconscious, so as to alleviate the suspicions of the townsfolk. Apparently, this would be the first of many times Denna would be struck by her patron, as according to the Kvothe, Master Ash beats her regularly in ways that won't leave scars. He does so sometimes in a temper, but mostly it's just to see how far he can go before she cries, or how far he can push her before she tries to leave and he has to lure her back. Many fans have speculated that because Master Ash beats her, this alludes to the possibility that he is Cinder, who is a known sadist and derives pleasure from cruelty. However, it could be that Master Ash is training her, and that the bruises she sustains from his cane are the results of intense physical exercises. Whatever the case may be, Denna is tightly bound to her patron and won't leave him, even if Kvothe asks her to. Still, Rothfuss appears to be hinting at some significant connection between Denna and the Chandrian narrative, which we mustn't turn a blind eye to. Given the role she played in Traben, this mysterious Master Ash, and her composing of the Song of Seven Sorrows, which praises Lanre as a hero, there definitely seems to be something going on with her and the Seven. What that is exactly is anyone's guess, but one of my favourite fan theories is the idea that Denna's story is a mirror to Kvothe's. The theory claims that Denna's family was killed by the Amir, a group of enigmatic church knights who stand in direct opposition to the Chandrian, and that she is allied with the Seven to get revenge on them. Much of this theory depends on Denna's patron actually being Cinder, which I still have my doubts about, because that would be way too obvious. Nevertheless, I think it's a pretty cool theory that goes to highlight that for all their similarities, Kvothe and Denna are just victims on opposing sides of an ancient war. This could be the reason why Rothfuss draws so many parallels between them. Just look how similar she is to Kvothe. She roams from place to place, which reflects much of his childhood. She is good with words, and has a natural proclivity for music that is hinted at being nearly as good as Kvothe's, though unrefined. Their argument about whether or not Lanre was a hero could be the setup for a major twist. Honestly, I think many people's opinions about Denna would change if we got this series told from her perspective. I think it'd prove to a lot of her critics that she does in fact harbour romantic feelings for Kvothe. Every man in Denna's life seeks her out. Kvothe is the exception because she seeks him out. She goes to great lengths to find him, spend quality time with him, and even gifts him an expensive loot case after she pawns off some extravagant jewellery. Sure, Denna and Kvothe have a lot of unresolved tension, but to be fair, there are times where she has been quite forward in showing her appreciation, even though Kvothe remains stoic and adamant in hiding his true feelings. If you're still not convinced, just look at her line in chapter 73 of The Wise Man's Fear, where she tells him, "You are mine alone, I don't intend to share you." Upon rereading the series again, I've grown to empathise with Denna more, albeit she has many flaws and is not perfect. This makes her more believable and a three-dimensional character. My hope is that when Doors of Stone is released in 2068, we get a proper backstory to her character, so that we can understand what really drives her. If you enjoyed this video, do leave a like, and for more Kingkiller content, character studies, and theories, do subscribe. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.